Okay, my friends, many of you know about the Mitchell Hedges crystal skull, and there it is right here. And it's been declared a fake, or, you know, a replica. Let's put it that way. Really, craftsmanship is amazing, but they say it's not real. I say it is real, and I'll point to the facts that I can claim. They pointed to some things that said, oh, see these little lines here? That had to be done with a dentist tool or something like that, which would be into the modern ages, not long ago. They didn't have the tools to do this at this time, it was claimed. So it's been claimed a forgery, and the person who found this was disparaged her entire life. She was a little girl when she found it, and her entire life, she died at 100 years old. They called her a fraud and a fake and a liar and everything else. That's just not right. That's academia going against reality. I'll show you what reality is and what they say against my reality. Let's find out whose reality is real. All right, this goes back a couple of years. Nerve fibers in the brain can generate quantum entanglement. Well, everything in your body has to be synchronized to work correctly. There's a whole lot of communication going on between different segments of the brain. Different segments of the brain do different jobs. Some of them do vision, some of them do hearing, some of them do coordination, some of them do whatever. But these fibers have to somehow be entangled, yes. What does entanglement mean? All right, do quantum interactions help brain cells stay in sync with each other? And obviously, there's some kind of interaction going on, but they haven't taken into account the factor of enzymes and how important the enzymes are. And bacteria are the things that create the enzymes. So it's bacteria in the body that really regulates all this stuff. If you don't have the enzyme created by the bacteria, you're not going to get the whatever it has to do, whether it's building something up, or it's breaking something down, or it's regulating something, or it's sensing something. Well, let me just show you about the Mitchell Hedges skull. Because the Mitchell Hedges skull, as far as I'm concerned, there's no way to deny it. All right? And they did deny it based on this. These little grooves like here, they didn't even look at what a human body looks like, it appears to me. Because this is a ponerosis tendon. It's a ponerosis. That's flat tendon. Little tiny bundles of them. They thought they were cut with a dentist tool or something. They said, no, it can't be real because of these grooves. Everything else, absolutely flawless. The jaw comes off, everything. And this poor woman was defamed her entire life. And inside here, there's a web of fibers that just there's no possible way anybody could have put them in here. And it also has other things I will show you in a second. But it's just not right what they did to her. Same thing with Velikovsky, just not right. And the ponerosis is thin sheets, delicate. It goes right across the top of your head and holds your head in, so your head doesn't explode. All right, you're just joking around a little bit, but normally you think of a tendon as like a rope going from a bone to a muscle. And it's a little rope that's in there, just gives it enough play to hold it really tight. A ponerosis, different. And here's what it looks like in the human body. A ponerosis, normally you think of it as the flat sheets that are in there. They girdle you. They girdle your body. But they also girdle your head. I don't blame them for not understanding that. Most people wouldn't know that unless they really study biology carefully, which I do. And here's what they were looking at right here. This is aponeurosis. It's epicranial aponeurosis. And I'll bet you if they looked, they'd see it coming down this way too. Over the top of the head and then coming down this way. You know, this stuff is, it's not that hard to figure out. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's already been figured out. Because here's the two of them side by side. You're not going to see any, there's no way that you're going to be able to deny the things I'm going to say. If you can, I want you to deny them during a discussion. This is, I think it's a cerebrum, this whole ball in the back. This is a brain with spectroscopy scanning so that you can see the different colors represent different fiber networks. And it would be interesting to see exactly what each one of these does, but they're getting pretty close to understanding a lot of that. But you can see, you see this bundle coming up here? You see this bundle coming up here? Do you see much of a difference? That's deep inside the skull. That's inside. Nobody could carve that. It's literally impossible. Now, the second thing to observe is this empty space here and this like ball down this way. Well, here's a ball here, but it's just a ball. It's not down this way. The reason it's down this way is because this thing died on its face. Like that. That's the lip wrinkled back, the nose wrinkled back. The jaw is, you take the jaw right off. It's detachable. These fibers, I mean, how can you deny this? It can't be denied. Now, I would like to have them do a re-examination. When you defame someone like that, like they have in these major universities, Mitchell Hedges, and you know, they should do a re-examination of it and say, well, wait a minute, let's take another look at it. Maybe we missed something. Let's see what they might have missed. My claim is it died on its face. All right, so this would have been in the mud. Now let's look at it real closely. All right, the most important thing to remember is it's the conditions that existed where this was interred. Now, I can tell you for a fact, this face was up like this. And the lip was pushed back, even the skin around the cheek is pushed back. The nose is pushed back. The brain is pushed forward. It was like this. And this was in the mud. And mud, as far as a mud fossil goes, mud is basically like you're surrounded with skin. You're surrounded with flesh. That's what mud is flesh. Flesh from a decayed creature's body. And where things are in the mud, they're much more protected. There's no skin to speak of around here. There's no fleshy stuff. Even the ear's gone, basically. You can see where it might have been. I don't know if you look real close. But why would the lip stay? And why would some of the fleshy stuff around the edge of the mouth stay? And the nose, well, it stayed because it got pushed back. So now this is in the ground, pushed back, the face. All of this stuff is up here, and it got boiled and boiled and boiled and boiled for years, probably, at least a year. And then when that was all done, it was in a pocket full of heavy silicates. They invade. And they take over, and they fill in voids. And everything here would have been voided because there was this places where you're supposed to have body tissue, and it's gone because it got boiled out. And boop, they came in and took over, and they took over everything up to the lip and everything, because they'll move within the tissue that they're in, but then they'll come up to a place where they're into the flesh. I'd love to be able to examine this thing in extreme detail, but I can tell you what, those little grooves on the top have nothing to do with modern tools. And there is no way whatsoever, none, zero, impossible, to put these kind of features inside that skull. It's impossible. Absolutely, totally, absolutely, without question, impossible. All right, if I've missed something, I'd like to know what it was. Now, some of this I really can't account for too well. It could be a little design change since then to us now, but it looks pretty like humanish to me. The jaw detaches, comes right off, just like it would on ours if you lost all your tendons and muscles, and they just come apart. This is, to me, that makes it undeniable. This and this coming down, all the nerve fibers deep inside the brain. This is a mud fossil that's gone quartz, just like my heart. It went quartz. Everything's here. You really can't miss it if you look at it carefully and understand what you see, and the ventricle walls and all the stuff that I showed you. I can't see anybody denying that this is real. I can't see anybody denying that. I'd love to see it from underneath, see a really close up front, all that stuff. But that's, to me, the guy died with his face down, and it's just like cast that and protected it like a membrane. All right, I found this very interesting. Some things I didn't know. Here she is, Anna Mitchell Hedges, at a very elderly age, and she died at 100. Being called a fraud and everything her whole life, and knowing she wasn't, she didn't lie about it. This is a post from We Are Human Angels. That damn thing shouldn't exist, was the awestruck pronouncement of a Hewlett-Packard crystallographer upon examining the enigmatic brilliance of the Mitchel Hedges crystal skull. The company image showcases Mitchel Hedges' skull, a remarkable artifact discovered by Anna Mitchell Hedges in Belize alongside the woman herself. And there she was. This goes back years ago. But she was always called a liar and a fraud. And she was not. And we're going to look at this skull closely, and she should be exonerated, and there should be a public statement said, we were wrong, this does happen, and it happened to this particular skull. And here's the evidence to support that. Show us the evidence that says, no, it's not true. But I did find some very interesting things in here about optical channels and so forth. Because when you look at an optical channel coming down to the optic nerve, It's just nothing but blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks of little blocks. And somehow it turns that into light at the optic nerve. I have no idea how. But this is what they're talking about here. Is the mystery indeed lies behind this skull. Legend speaks of 13 life-size skulls, each contain crucial information for the future of mankind. This, I don't know about anything about that. The very material of these objects, the quartz, formed under immense pressure and heat, possesses a unique polarity reacting to both light and electricity with its inherent helical structure. That is partially true. You don't necessarily need an extreme heat and pressure, although it doesn't hurt. The Mitchell Hedges skull stands apart as a singular and captivating artifact, meticulously carved, well, no, it wasn't, to the size and form of a human female head. Scientific analysis conducted by Frank Dorland and later by Hewlett-Packard revealed an astonishing feat of craftsmanship. It was a human body. Both the cranium and the mandible were fashioned from a single, unbroken block of quartz from a human body. Even more perplexing was the observation that this intricate carving seemed disregarded the natural crystalline axis of the stone. That's because it grew to where it's supposed to be. And it was achieved without leaving any discernible traces of metal tools. It defies our current understanding of the manufacturing techniques prevalent at the time of its likely creation. It was a human being. Quartz, renowned for its exceptional hardness, renders the creation of such a detailed object an arduous task, even with modern technology, let alone the primitive methods presumably available over 1,000 years ago. The estimated age of the Mayan skull, they say it was about 3,500 years ago, maybe. Further layers of mystery shroud the skull, particularly concerning the function of its graceful arched cheekbones, which appear to act as sophisticated optical conduits, channeling ambient light directly towards the eye sockets. The internal structure reveals the presence of intricate prisms. Intricate prisms. That's what I see, these little square, unbelievable, and tunnels that manipulate light in unforeseen ways. Strikingly, experiments have demonstrated that when illuminated from below, the skull seems to possess an inner light, an ethereal glow that further confounds scientific explanation. The skull makes you think, doesn't it? Well, some people think, some people don't. All right, it's truly captivating. It's remarkable. It's a captivating enigma, suggests forgotten civilization possess powers we can barely grasp. No, we can barely grasp the truth that that skull right there is a product of basically mud fossilization where there was no real mud. So everything boiled out, and what filled back in was quartz, because quartz is heavy. Here's the deal. This must have been at the bottom of a well or something, and face down, boiled out just like everything else did, but all that it was left in the deepest part of the well was quartz, because that's where it goes. It's heavy. It's 2.5 times heavier than water. 2.5 times heavier. And the only reason it was up above and so much dense and supersaturated the waters above was because the oceans flopped and did all this gigantic flood where we were almost hit by Venus. And that created the siliceous ooze, it's called, which is 2.5 times heavier than water. It lays on the ocean floor to come up and be part of the waters. And it laid into this cylinder, whatever this cylinder was. You could probably recreate one of these. You know, something like this, some kind of biology, by supersaturating water in a cylinder after it was the body part was completely boiled. Everything was boiled out of it. Everything. And all that was left there was the structural support. And then the nucleophilic invasion comes, and whatever's in the waters will invade. If there was blood all over the place in here, you'd see it just like blood, and you'd see it just like meat. You see that? This one didn't get in a condition like this where it was like, I think she said she found it at the bottom of a well too, as I recall. But let me show you what would happen if you had a heart, okay? I showed you this heart, all right? The ventricle wall, all the goopy little stuff that, you know, holds you in place, the fascia around it. All right? Now, if this was, it died in a place where it was just saturated with blood, the blood didn't run out of there, the blood stayed there. It would take on all these different colorations of blood depending upon whether it was a ventricle wall, whether it was, you know, a valve, whatever, and I can show you that. All right, this is an opal heart from Australia in, I believe, the Ural region. Now, I'm not sure how to read this thing, how they cut it, but I do know that this side was down, because the metals are down here, they're heavier. This side was up. So the whole thing was laying like that. Now, they cut it where they just cut it. Now, there's some plumbing up here. What I'm looking at, and of course you can see the heartstrings and all that stuff, there's also cardiac muscle, which is, I believe I can see bundles of these here and there. Now let me show you what they look like, and let me focus in so you can see what I'm talking about. You see these little round bundles? There's a lot of them here and there if you look around real careful. And then there's going to be a membrane on the outside of it, which is there. It's brownish looking stuff. Now, that's the heart. I showed you my heart here, which has completely gone to crystal. Just a tiniest little taste from the aorta of red blood, and that's it. And then a lot of the gooey stuff that's on a heart will turn into, you know, sort of a, not like a clear crystal. That's the key. They call them inclusions. So there's a lot of inclusions in my stuff. In hers, it was just flawlessly washed with silicates. And the face was pushed up and the brain was pushed down. It's just, it's almost impossible to miss it if you take enough time to look at it and to think, how would they possibly have known, first of all, that these fibers existed in the brain? Like here, they wouldn't know that. Now, they say there's little tiny ribs cut here that they think had to be done with modern tools. Well, that's not true, because that's a ponerosis tendon. You see that? Those are little white stripes that go all the way down. And like I said before, I think I have a different shot of that. It's a better shot. Hold on. Oh, maybe not. It's a flat, striped area. And they think they were cut it with a tool. No, absolutely not. I'm sure they can see these other areas that would support the statements I'm making, because they did it petrified in the most exquisite manner I've ever seen. And the only thing that was squished about it was a face, and a brain moved down. The cerebrum, moved down this way. All the rest is undeniable, in my opinion, undeniable. All right, just so we're all on the same page, a ponerosis tendon is this thin, sheet-like tendon, but they're little tiny straps. And the difference between regular tendon, rope-like, is that these are thin sheaths. Very thin, delicate, but strappy. And you don't realize it, but on your skull, you have these. You see these? Epicranial aponeurosis tendons. They wrap the skull. And they saw these little grooves, and they automatically, the study I saw was she was in a lab coat, and she was pointing to these grooves, and there's no way for that to happen unless you had a special tool. And I immediately knew it was the ponerosis. But how do you get through to anybody to talk about this? Now, and she was defamed for her whole life. It's just not right. Same thing with Velikovsky. The pushback is very, very difficult to accept when you believe that the Ivy League, universities are there to foster intelligence, to bring the human mind up, not keep it locked in a box. And that's what I found. And the key is nowhere to be found. All right, one last time. That skull, in my opinion, was in a well-ish area. It died on its face. They say it's a female. And the lip and so forth was in the mud. The cylinder, or whatever the little basin it was in, literally filled up with completely silicates. They're much heavier than water. So they would even displace the water that was in there and fill it with complete silicates. And it was just happenstance that this occurred the way it did. It was right after the Great Flood. It was boiled to complete fabric, nothing left but the tissue that makes up the fabric. Collagens and keragens, I believe, are what is the connective tissue. And in between that connective tissue, it's just filled right back in with silicates, because that's all that was in this cylinder. That's the way I'm looking at this. Otherwise, I see no other way it could happen. It was on its face, and whatever was inside as body tissue was replaced with nucleophilic invasion and substitution. The mud acted literally as a membrane. It would see it as a membrane. This side is one side of the membrane, that's the other side. And it would pop right out of there when he lifted it up. Now, I see no possibility that this could be unreal, could be faked. I'm sure there's other ones that are fake. I know I've seen a whole ton of them that there's no way in the world they're real. But this, there's no way in the world this is not real. she should be publicly announced that she was correct, she was not a liar, she was not a fraud, and we should start to examine Velikovsky again. And my stuff needs to be allowed as well. I'm being thrown off every page that exists, basically, because I'm showing things that nobody can accept. They're hard to accept. I don't disagree with that. That I don't disagree with. But this needs to be straightened out. She needs to be announced that she was not lying. This is not a fake. Nobody twisted a lip up like that and pushed their nose back and somehow got inside there and moved the brain forward. No. It was like this, died. Filled with silicates, nothing but silicates in this tube for somehow. And the silicates 2.5 times heavier than water, so whatever was there, it would have just overflowed like outside of a tube, and it would fill with the silicates, if there was enough silicates there. And there appears there was. I see no other possibility. None. Zero. All right, this is primarily quartz. I have another one that I cut in half. But let's look at this. This is the right atrium. Boom, coming out here. Now, you got a pulmonary artery that is here. It's broken off right here. Behind it, where this red blood is where the aorta was. That's the aorta, and that stuff breaks right off. Then you've got your ventricle wall. There's the ventricle wall right there. That stuff is tough. And then you've got this blob that hangs over the end, this side, which is the ventricle wall outside. So this is a ventricle wall running right down here. This is the right pulmonary artery, the vena cava, I believe they call this. And right behind the pulmonary artery is the aorta, where the red blood is. So this is quartz, as much as possible. The key is that quartz fills in certain types of tissues perfectly. And depending upon how much quartz is in the water and how long the body part boiled for, if it completely eliminates everything that was there before except the fascia, basically. This stuff, when you see quartz, and they're going to have a vein around them, quartz veins. The quartz has to be wrapped with something. And as I just showed you, this is all like gooey stuff. All right, it's fascia. There it is right there. And they break right off. The plumbing breaks right off at the top, usually 99% of them. All right, this is the one I cut. But it was also quartz. You see, these are the heartstrings. And they are inside of the valves primarily. And these are the heartstrings. Just like this. And this is this stuff here. Now, looked at it real closely in a microscope, you can see it's basically the same as this. And then you come into the heartstrings. And like I say, the quartz, I put a little moisture on here. A little moisture always helps. But anytime there's real tissue membrane type of tissue, different than fleshy tissue. It seems to preserve to some degree. And this is where the valves were, I believe, up here. The heartstrings coming up to them. They usually break right off flat. That would have been right across here, and I just cut it to see what was inside. You know, this has been going on for a long time. I've done a lot of digging around inside of body parts. Basically, that's what they are. Now, I can show you something that eroded extremely on one side, all the way down to the bone. That's the bone ball. And on the other side, it didn't erode much at all. It's only eroded to where you can see the actual, you see those rope straps looking things, those are muscles. And that is a tendon coming down, and that's the center of the tendon. This is from a gigantic fingertip. Well, not gigantic. It's a 4-foot wide hand. And it was DNA tested. Some of it was CAT scanned, but these are the straps of muscle that come up to wrap your fingers. And these are the tendon that makes your fingers go like that. This side, everything's gone. Completely eroded off right down to the bone ball. It depends how deep it was in the mud, which side was in the mud, and so forth. In the crystal skull, the face was in the mud. It was buried like this. And this was eroded, well, not eroded. In that case, it was boiled into complete evacuation of all the molecules in there, basically. And then it was replaced with silicates. Silicates will invade. You know, they call them quartz veins. They're pretty much quartz arteries. But they are quartz, yes. They'll invade spaces that are open. All right, I always keep talking about the hearts break right off there, and basically they do. Now, this is a silicon heart, and this is the superior vena cava right here. And then there's another valve that goes up here, and then the red blood, the aorta, is there. Now, this band right here, you see that band? That is the ventricle wall. Keeps it pumping. But basically, they break off right above here. That stuff just goes, either gets stuck with the lungs or whatever. But it's gone from the top of the heart. And you can see these, you see these little bumps here? That's where there was a strap that held this. There was some kind of support here, and these are like wrinkle zones. But it's a quartz heart. And I cut one open just to show the right here. There's the heartstrings. Now whether it's going this way, I think it's going that way. And this is towards the bottom of the heart. Anyway, there's a whole new way of looking at things if you look at things in a whole new way. Then make your decision. But to make the decision before looking is not a good look, in my opinion.